Greg, happy to have you on here,
Hey,
man.
good to see
Um,
you, Jake, Larry.
and as Larry just said, our pre-conversation probably should have been recorded too. But
Mhm.
I'm stoked to have you on here. And you know what we're really out to do with this podcast, which I don't know if we're calling the Save a Warrior podcast or the Shift or Drift podcast or some combination of the two. But it's really to capture the stories of alumni from Save a Warrior and hopefully, just get it to where it reaches somebody out there who's suffering, who maybe hasn't heard about Saul or isn't really sure about it yet, doesn't know enough about it, hasn't pulled the trigger on clicking submit, but they're suffering. And I know my story can't reach all of them. Larry's story can't reach all of them, but maybe if we get enough, there's going to be some connection point to where they feel related and just understood and heard to where they feel safe enough to apply and get some help and are ready to be done suffering, because that's what it takes.
It is.
Uh, so what I'm really curious about, man, and I know I've heard parts of your story at different times, but what is it that led you to Save a Warrior? Like, what was going on in your life that, you know, had you finally decide to take that plunge?
Well, right there in that time of my life, I was coming to the end of a long, slow suicide. I had been drinking almost a handle-sized bottle of vodka every day, just seeking oblivion. I was married to a woman, a dear woman, but a woman that would have married me. And we moved to the end of the road in the middle of the swamp and at a place called Steenhatchee, which is a native word for Dead Man Bay. And I thought it was poetic because that's what I intended to do. I was going to drink myself to death out there in the hammocks of Florida. I got to the point where I knew that I was just about, oh, my ride was just about over. I was just about to succeed in everything that I was trying to succeed at, which was pretty much find a way to end my life. And I'd spent the previous, I don't know, since I was 12, trying to find somebody or something to kill me because I had this uh, belief that the only way I get into heaven is if I was killed trying to help somebody. So that I made my career that. I survived my career, which was a horrible, horrible thing in my eyes. Um,
Can you hit on what your career was real quick?
yeah, I was a professional fireman. I worked as a part-time deputy for a couple of years. I stopped that shortly after 9/11 because my full-time job required more attention. Um, yeah, I was a fireman, and that's pretty much all I ever was. My childhood prepared me for a life of, my childhood prepared me to be in tragedy all the time. It was what I knew. And after some years of retirement, trying to drink myself to death, destroying two marriages, uh, I found Save a Warrior. I saw a news clip and it resonated with me on a level that I didn't know I had, and it became a possibility. So I went to a detox and detoxed off of the alcohol, and then went to a treatment center for first responders and military that specializes in treating PTS. Learned a lot there. Got home, learned that my wife was done, and so she left. Thank God I'd already hit submit before I went into detox because I knew that I needed what you guys had. The seeing in you, I saw something I might be able to become someday. That's kind of a narrow way of looking at it, but that's how I saw it. I wanted what you had. No idea how it was possible. Didn't care. I was a dead man walking. And in fact, my time at SAW, I was dissociating in and out, and so horribly numb that I have memories, very few memories of it. Almost, it's almost kind of a foggy thing, but somehow I absorbed something there. It metabolized within me. And you guys set me on a course, and that's pretty much how I got to Saw. When I got there, I figured that if I hadn't been able to drink myself to death, I hadn't been able to get somebody else to kill me, I'm not ready to leave my daughters with a suicide father. My grandfather killed himself. So it was the end of the road and the beginning.
I love that. And the beginning. Your rostering call is one of the ones I'll always remember, because even before we got to it, I think it was like 11 a.m. that I reached out to you to schedule it for. This is before we had all those systems stitched together, Larry. You remember when we were just calling all the people that had hit Hags's calendar?
Right.
And pulling them forwards. And Greg had said to me, he's like, "Oh, well, I'm way too pissed off by that time." And I was like, "Well, you're going to have to push your pissed off o'clock back a little bit, because this is what I have available for you. Can you make it work?" And he said, "Yeah." And you leaned right into that. And I could hear the desperation. Your exile was available. The exile is that part of ourselves that, has been keeping score our whole lives. That just every time we've been hurt, every time we've been abandoned, abused, all that, it's got the receipts for all the pain that we've stuffed down and never expressed, never processed, all that. And when it comes out, these tubes up here start to turn on. And that's a big thing we look for in the rostering calls is the exile available? Is this person going to be able to get to their grief? Because that's what holds this whole game up. All the stuff we pushed on for so long, because what happens otherwise, it's like a pot of boiling water that boils over at all the wrong times and looks a whole lot like us exploding on our families and friends and loved ones. And just every time we build something up, we burn it right back to the ground. And yeah, I just remember yours vividly, and the other calls that we had between then and your cohort. It's been amazing watching your journey, and I still even learn from you with the new books you're reading. I just got the Wayne Dyer book you told me about the other day. About to get into that one because I just finished the other audiobook I was listening to. It's exciting.
Which one?
But
which one by Wayne Dyer?
Oh, what's the name of it? It's the one where he's unpacking the Tao Te Ching.
Change your thoughts, change your...
Change your thoughts, change your mind. Right?
That's a good one. That's a
Yeah.
really good one.
It might be life. Change your thoughts, change your life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm in the first chapter, and it's just awesome.
Yeah.
But who would have thought that we're listening to books and absorbing these and talking about these just a few years ago? When I was in the Army, I made fun of a buddy for having a book on, I think it was like Meditation for Dummies or Buddhism for Dummies. I ridiculed him for that. I ridiculed him for listening to podcasts and trying to better himself, because it was like nerd stuff. And now it's like, it's all I do. I read books and I learn, and I just look for that next golden nugget of what might I be able to apply to my life that'll help me? What might I be able to share with another such that it'll improve their life? So what are some of those big shifts you've seen in your life that, what are some of the things that spurred them, that shift in your thinking, and some of the big shifts you've noticed to where, life's showing up in a different way?
I think the first one, me too, by the way. When I was on the job, critical incident stress debriefing was just becoming kind of a thing. And I was full of nothing but ridicule for it. And I was horrible to those guys that needed it. I thought they were too weak to be in the fire department. If they had feelings about the stuff, they're in the wrong job. And I got to Sable Warrior, and somebody asked me what if maybe I've been wrong my whole life, and maybe there's other ways of being that are not a living hell. And that question haunted me, and still does. And I'm still in those books, and I'm letting one book lead me to another. And I've noticed the world as it occurs to me now is such a dramatically different place than before. My family used to hate riding with me in a car everywhere. I would strap on my vehicle, and I drove fire trucks. You know, that was my thing. I'm a wheelman, and I would strap on my vehicle, and everywhere I went, I was on a windshield survey. I was looking for some bastard trying to kill me or somebody else, or some calamity to happen, and I found that stuff. And it was Larry who said that told me that I was a good cop and I find what I'm looking for. And that hit me like a sledgehammer when I was driving out of here after talking to Larry during one of my slumps after Saw. You know, after Saw, I rode the pink cloud of the glimpse of enlightenment that I'd gotten there as long as I could without doing the work. And I called Larry, and Larry said, "You're a good cop. You found what you look for." And immediately it dawned on me that open space for choice in what I look for. And that was one of the biggest shifts that occurred for me. I no longer hop in my vehicle and strap it on and go out doing windshield surveys or on patrol. I'm just driving a car.
Wow.
It's such subtle little things, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
My first
goosebumps don't lie. I'm still in awe of that. My whole relationship to the world has changed, and the world itself has changed in response.
my first thing that I noticed that seemed just miraculous, it was probably 3 months or so after Saul. I woke up one day and I was like, I think I just went to sleep when I went to bed last night. I think I went to bed, laid down, and went to sleep. And it's like, to a lot of people, that might sound like nothing. But to me, who I would struggle with insomnia until like 3 or 4 a.m. every night, and it would just be torturing myself with my own thoughts and just diving more and more into the anxiety, and it would get its grips deeper and deeper in me, you know. But then it's like, how long's that been happening? You know, is it going to happen again? And it did, again and again and again, as long as I continue with my meditation practice and continuing doing the work to where I don't have to stress about all this stuff. You know, the whale's always in the water. I have faith in something beyond me now, to where I don't have to try to figure out the woes of the world right before I go to bed every night and count up all the ways I've screwed up, you know, because I've learned to forgive myself. But just that little thing, I went to sleep when I went to bed, you know. I just drive when I'm out in the car now. Like, that's huge. It's amazing.
It's big enough to give me actual tears of gratitude. I've never experienced that in my life. Never been grateful for anything. I always felt like I had to seize things, you know. And that's another shift right there. Thanks for that.
Gratitude. See,
Yeah.
When I come into Save a War, it's the things I don't know that I don't know. And it sounds like gobbledygook. It sounds like hippie bullshit. And that's what I called it. I came into Save a War an asshole and calling bullshit on everything, looking at a pile of books. I'm never going to read those books. Well, look, they're all back there now. And I have these epiphanies. And when I examine the wisdom and I'm coming into Save a Warrior, what I don't know is I have a very negative way of seeing life and seeing the universe. And I've had it as far back as I can remember. I'm always looking for worst case scenarios and trying to resolve issues, disasters that I'm predicting in my future, trying to offset them or at least change them so they have some sort of beneficial outcome for me. And I'm trying to manipulate and power my way through life. And I come in to Save a Warrior, have this conversation, and I kind of wake up. I was describing it to somebody the other day. It's like going into a rest stop. I'm lost out here in the world. I'm frustrated. I'm trying different things, trying to find peace. I can't find it. So I'm trying different things, and I go into a rest stop, which is Save a Warrior. And the first thing I see is a big map with a red arrow on it that says, "You are here." Okay. All right. So I got complex PTS. All right. And if I want to find my way out of it, here's a path. And I tell people, Save a Warrior kind of wakes you up. Here's where you're at. Now I follow the other warriors on this path before me, as long as they have something that I want. And I mean, you have the sanity, confidence, peace, joy, all that. You have it. I want it. I got to do what you do if I want that. And realizing a lot of my negative view of life, I've been trained to have that negative view. I've been trained to look for those worst case scenarios. Like you said, you're driving the truck, and just stop looking for those things, because I'm a good cop. I find exactly what I'm looking for. I had to learn how to do that, and I had to retrain my negative mentality, my negative view of the world, and focus on gratitude. When I start focusing on gratitude, and that's the gratitude challenge I think I set you on at one point, where I got to write a thank you note every single day. Every single day. I don't care. I'm making a commitment. I'm writing a thank you note every day for 3-4 months, whatever it is. And what happens when I do that, I come into it with this negative view of life, but I made a commitment that I'm going to write a thank you note. So I want to honor my word. So the first dozen thank you notes are very easy, because there's a whole list of people I got to thank. Write those. And then after a while, now I really got to stretch my mind, because I still want to honor my word. Who am I writing a thank you note today? So, okay, that person. And then pretty soon I run out of those. And so what happens, because I still want to honor my word, now I'm just out here in life, and I want to honor my word. So I'm looking for people that I can write thank you notes to later. Anybody that does something nice to me, you're going to get a thank you note in the mail for that. And what I'm doing is I'm retraining my mind to look for gratitude. Instead of looking for a disaster, I am training my mind to look for gratitude, and to he who has, more will be given. When I train my mind to look for that, I'm going to start finding things to be grateful for more and more throughout the day. That's what I meant. I'm a good cop. I find exactly what I'm looking for when I train my mind to stop looking. So if I'm out there looking for bad guys doing bad stuff, that's easy to find. I'm going to find them. And when I stop doing that, instead start looking for gratitude, well, that's what I'm going to find. And man, does the world become a better place quickly when I start doing that.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
I have a few pointed questions for you, Greg. Are you open to sharing about some of the items that you've brought back to Save a Warrior and what that meant to you? Being able to bring those back in the labyrinth and some of the other things.
I am. I almost feel like I'm talking in the third person, remembering who I was. I kept mementos, I guess, of large life loss incidents, fires, dead kids, melted smoke detectors, melted children's toys, as some kind of proof that the world is just bad. I left one toy from a fire. It was on a Daisy Street, so I refer to it as Daisy Street Fire. And it was one of those calls that everything that could go wrong did from dispatch forward. Everybody in the first due, apart from us, I was on a heavy rescue squad, was assigned to an outside gas leak at a school, and they were put on TAC channel. So when the fire was dispatched and we were on a medical call, supporting the medic on the 11th floor, about 10 miles away from this fire, 10 minutes away from it, We ended up being the first suppression unit on scene, 3 people trapped, reports of screams from inside, just constant updates on the radio. We get there. I breached the door and cut left, grabbed the wall and cut left. And as soon as I did that, the room flashed over and the fireball blew my lieutenant off the stairs behind me, so I'm alone in the building. Everybody that was in there was already dead, but, I had to throw myself in the water anyway to do my job, I guess. That's the way I looked at it. A little boy, we determined later, was playing with fire, playing with matches, and he set the trailer on fire. Trailers, they burn like a book of matches. They're death traps. They burn fast and hot. So I took one of his toys that was actually sitting on the fireplace mantle in the trailer. And it was, fireplace mantles, 4.5 feet, 5 feet off the ground, and it was melted. And I left that there. And when I did, I felt as though I was giving this little boy who had a fascination with fire the opportunity to be kind of a gatekeeper there and to welcome the warriors home as they leave their armor and come back to the world, because that's what that labyrinth meant to me.
Powerful.
And he's still there. Anybody who's watching this can go and see him. I'm sure that if the car's gone, the car's gone. But that little boy is there, just eagerly happy to see soldiers and firemen and cops come in and save themselves and each other for a change.
Yeah, so often we carry around these objects that, we carry it in suffering as a way of staying connected to these, people we couldn't save. I have very similar. It was this can of beer. My buddy Tar hung himself in his barracks room. And that night he'd stolen a case of beer from the shopette, which was something we did at times. And he ran it back, and the route running back is always through another battalion's barracks first, so they'll get blamed if there's video footage. But he hung himself in his barracks room that night, and the next day I grabbed that case of beer and tucked it away in my room, because it's like I'm gonna keep these to remember him, and ultimately handed them out to a few friends. And I carried that beer from, I moved at least once a year after I got out of the Army. And I took that can of beer from place to place to place, still drinking like it was going out of style. And, suffering as a way of staying connected to him, all the dates we remember. And it's just like, I'm going to be sad on this day. And then it expands to the days around it. And I'm going to drink to honor my friends, but it's actually just so that I can just be miserable. Mm-hmm. Instead of, maybe shifting and letting that go, which is what I ultimately did. It wasn't at the labyrinth at Saul. I found one that I happened to live in a neighborhood in Tempe, just a few blocks from ASU, and there happened to be a labyrinth in the center of that, at one of the parks there. And of course, I dumped the beer, smashed the can and everything. But I guarantee it got moved. But for me, being able to leave that behind was such a huge moment, because it shifted to, I get to carry him in a place of love, and I'm going to live a big life for him. And I'm going to, stick inside of this new purpose that I have in life to reach back for the next guy. I see that as my responsibility now, because there's other people out there suffering like he was. And I was suffering in the same way too. It terrified me when he killed himself, because what does that mean about the thoughts I'm having at night? Because it already seemed like a ticking time bomb for me. And I knew he was a better dude than me, tougher than me, just more vibrant, more alive than me. And I didn't know what to do with all that. But I stayed connected to it, and I kept drinking, and I kept doing all those negative things. And then, when I was able to let that go and cried as I did, it shifted things for me, to where it's like, I don't have to hate myself if I ever experience joy just because he doesn't get to. But what I do get to do is live my life in such a way that I can find other people who are suffering like that and point them down the path.
Me too. That was, and one of the other things I dropped off was I had a roof tile and pieces of Flight 77 from the Pentagon on 9/11. And it took up a prominent place in my home. It was a huge shadow with a ton of ghosts on it, and I felt it was incumbent on me to grieve them for the rest of my life, every moment of every day, and I couldn't feel joy because they can't. It wouldn't be right, you know. And to be able to bring that stuff to Saw and leave it transformed it. It's transformative now. Those things are symbols of healing rather than the chains of the past.
Yeah.
Some of those, and you'll notice this, Greg. I noticed it when you were talking, and we spoke about it in the last interview. We touched on it. Human beings are meaning-making machines. That's how our brain stores the information upon every event, everything we come across, and those mementos. Ooh, I had a couple mementos and one of them for me was a challenge coin that I put what I refer to as abnormal spiritual value on a physical item. And that's me adding so much meaning to this thing. But I had bracelets with people's names on them that I had lost. I had a challenge coin that I had so much significant meaning wrapped around this one thing, and I always had it in my pocket. So anytime I wanted to, I could reach into my pocket and I could touch that and remember that tragic day. And I noticed when you were talking about moving to that trailer down in Florida, when you were talking about it, your eyes kind of drifted, and I could feel you hit those feelings and emotions because those are stuck on that little particular thing, and I re-feel that event as I'm dwelling on the past. I'm re-feeling all the memories associated to that, and that's what we refer to as the inside drugstore. And that old feeling of depression and sadness starts creeping in, and I could see it on your face as you were talking about it. And that's exactly what those mementos are. When I carry uh, an item around and it reminds me of a tragedy, I carry it around with me so I can, because I think I'm doing it out of honor. I think I'm honoring that person by carrying that thing. But what I'm turning into is Gollum, and that's becoming my precious. And it's a point of misery I can always touch and remind myself, and I feel those internal serotonins and adrenaline and all these other chemicals and hormones whenever I feast on that little item in my mind that I have so much meaning wrapped around. That's the freeing part of that labyrinth. And I didn't know you were the one. I've seen those items that you described in the labyrinth. I didn't know who left those things there. But, I was leaving the labyrinth kind of asshole-ish, like, okay, I'm going to sit here and ponder myself. And as I was leaving, Adam Carr said, if you have an item on you that is burning a hole in your pocket like a cancer, this is where you leave it. And it took so much effort. Oh, how do you know about this thing that's in my pocket? Why are you talking direct? And finally to leave it, I'm free. I'm free of that thing. Anyway, tube.
Yeah, that coin that you'd rub smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a powerful moment. Like, I could see how much you struggled setting it down. You took your time with it, and I could see it really took something. And it always does. It takes something to leave something like that behind. But it's also necessary.
Same thing with the bracelets. When I have somebody that I've lost in their name on this bracelet here, just says, "In loving memory of all of our nation's fallen officers, may they live on forever." It's not specific to one individual, but I used to have them with individuals' names on it, and I would look at my arm and all of a sudden my demeanor, my spirit is a little bit more depressed than it was before I looked at it. And I'm doing that to myself all day, and I'm not even aware that I'm doing that.
Me
That's our
too.
own.
And it was that kind of a space that I was in it when I came to SAW. It was I was carrying death with me everywhere I went, and looking for death everywhere I went. And putting that stuff down was not easy, because I believe I'm so comfortable wrapped in this the putridity of death, that to step outside of that into an unknown, which is what Saul represented to me, was terrifying. And I had already made the decision that this is either going to kill me or I'm going to find something here. So it takes what it takes. I had to be there to be here. That life existed solely to create this one.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Look at you now, though. I just got off the phone recently with a guy that's coming in, probably the next cohort, that's there because he spoke to you and he wants what you have. Whatever it is, the life that you have, he wants it. And God bless you, brother. God bless you for doing the work on yourself. And, that's the weird thing. I do the work on myself. It heals other people. And that's what you've done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That dude, same guy, told me Greg is the first man he's ever opened up to. It's mostly just been women and stuff like that. And there's probably something to that. But Greg's the first man he ever felt safe sharing things with. And like that's a big ticket item. And, even before he applied, you called me, a week ago, with concern for him, because you could see the suffering in his eyes. That's one thing you'll never fail to do after going through an experience like this. You'll never fail to see the suffering in another person's eyes. And,
I'd like to tell you that story.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
So in my readings, one of the things that I reread, was Walden by Henry David Thoreau. And he, in his very first chapter, Economy, he talks about the joy of living with economy and in it as a manner of living, not having more than I need, not going to these extremes that I did. I lived a life, I lived larger than life, and people would actually say that to me. My existence was just larger than life. I took on great big problems outside of myself and attacked them with vigor and all that, but I never looked inside, never once. And that was a big shift. I forget where I was going now, but that was a big shift, where I went from that external, Lao Tzu calls it the world of the 10,000 things, trying to control the 10,000 things and get what I want out of it, such an illusion. None of it mattered. And the whole time I was avoiding what was in here that had been buried so deep and was starting to squirt out of the sides. And I had been drifting for a little while, and I saw a post in the SAW group about equine therapy. And so I'd looked to see if there was an equine therapy place near me, and I found them. And I've been working there. I go there 4 days a week, and I muck stalls, and I live small. And I focus on the small, and I notice the small. And I started building relationships with the animals, and he would come and go, but he saw me, and I wasn't suicidal, and he wanted to know how, and I told him. It was that simple. And that's what happened for me. I went to 9 rehabs of various types, screaming like a baby on his back, rescue me, rescue me, rescue me. And I was looking for somebody to jump in the water with me and grab me and carry me to safety. And what I got was a bunch of warriors that said, here's a rope, do with it what you will. And gave me that agency to grab the rope or not. And I chose to grab it because, the option was go ahead and die. And now everything is unknown. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. People ask me how I am. The first thing that pops into my head is which eye. And then the second thing is I might be going mad, but I don't really have anything else planned.
Yeah, there's a story about this dude who's something of a guru, and he speaks against, I think it's Descartes, I think therefore I am. And he would challenge people, where's this I that you speak of? It's like, that's the only thing that's off with that statement. Where's this I that you speak of? And like, you can keep looking for it and looking for it. It's really hard to find it because there's some, especially because there's so many expressions of self. Am I the one observing my thoughts? Am I the one thinking them? Am I the one observing that I'm observing the thoughts? Am I the meat puppet? Like, am I the container for which the thoughts arise in? Could be so many things.
That's where warrior
so really searching for the
meditation
why is difficult. What's that?
That's where warrior meditation comes in for me. I never knew there was a space between having a feeling or a thought and acting. That I'd feel something and then I'd react to it or respond to it. I'm a responder. And the warrior meditation, for me, it's not a pleasant thing most of the time. I have a thought, I want to react, but I'm able to put a wedge in there and create that little bit of space. And that's where the change happened, because that space is where I am.
I am.
I forget.
Anything I put after the statement I am limits myself.
It does.
Yeah, meditation I view, much like you say, Greg, as a despite practice. It's not all sunshine and rainbows and blowjobs, It's more of a despite practice. And can I continue doing this thing despite the, discomfort I feel in my neck or my shoulders? Can I continue coming back to the part of the practice I'm in despite the thoughts that keep popping up, despite the million things I could be getting done during these 20 minutes? Can I continue to sit here day in and day out and spend these 20 minutes for me and slow down my thinking? Can I let go of these thoughts despite how addicted to my own thinking I am, And doing it pays dividends, and we live in a world of instant gratification, and it doesn't come immediately with the meditation, but, doing it week in and week out, it makes such huge shifts, like in my life, in my relationships. Go ahead. What were you about to say?
No, I'm sorry. You were saying huge difference.
Yeah, just in my life and my relationships and the way I show up, and then just, that just translates to how I interact with everyone. What are some big shifts you've seen in that, your relationships with, your family, people around you?
It's been a big few months for family. My daughters, I have two daughters. They're 20 and 21. They fled my house when they were 18 and moved in with their mother. And they've basically been camped out there, stuck. And all I've done is stopped being judgmental. I was hit at some point in my journey with the understanding that to judge others is to damn myself, because I've done awful things. I've been part of that awful things, and I used those awful things to support my core belief that I'm disposable and worthy of contempt. And when I realized that judging voice wasn't mine, that my true nature is just one of kindness and love. I started giving kindness and love instead of judgment and advice, and it was like miracle grow for my children. They both struggle with being raised in a dysfunctional family, and now I've got one that is calling me every day to tell me how wonderful it is that she finally signed up to go back to school, and she's taking a full load of classes, and she's going through that roller coaster, and I'm able to just be with her for that and provide a lift up instead of do it this way, do it that way kind of thinking that I used to have. And she's blooming. And my other daughter is entering the workforce with the same kind of enthusiasm. And they're both tripping and falling. And I don't see a mistake anymore. I see all of the successes that they built on to get to that point where they make a mistake. And those are all first steps that now the next time are going to be second steps, easier.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to watch, and I'm just extraordinarily grateful.
Yeah. I forget who it was, the book I was listening to recently. They said, there aren't failures. There's only lessons, and it's neat when we can hold it that way. And it's awesome that your daughters are doing well. I was stoked when you mentioned that to me before. And who would have thunk? Who would have thunk that the big shift you could have in relationships is that all these people aren't out there in the world waiting on me to come fix them? Like imagine that. Like when that finally landed on me, because much the same. It's like, oh, they just need some direction and from me, like because clearly they don't got this figured out. And I had very strange relationships when I came from that space, to say the least. But life becomes such a beautiful thing, doesn't it?
It does.
And it takes so much work, but it's so very worth it. Thank you so much for everything you shared with us today, Greg. I appreciate it. I appreciate every time I get to spend time with you, talk to you, all of that, because like I said, you've got this almost poetic like wisdom about you, and it shows how much of the work you do. I mean, you quoted Lao Tzu. I probably didn't say that name right, but you quoted that dude in this call. That's somebody who's out there looking, and just observing and taking things in and applying. So it inspires me, and I'm sure others, to do the same.
I hope. I certainly haven't done it perfectly, but I just haven't quit. One foot in front of the other, and there's wonder in the world that I am now looking. That's where I'm looking, and I'm looking to guys like you that have been where I want to go, and obviously you're rock stars in my view, and I want to grow up to be just like you.
Thanks. I'll let you know when I grow up so we know where I finish at. But I got a lot of growing to do.
Me too.
I'm not interested in growing up, and
It's a
look
trap.
for the wonder within. There you go. That's why she named it that. All right.
Is that what your hat says? You're kind of blurry on my end.
The wonder within.
Nice.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
It's good to see you, Greg. I'm always blessed interacting with you. And you've come back and shepherded. You're doing all kinds of stuff. Be good
Just
to see
the
you
next right
again.
thing.
What's that?
Just the next right thing.
Yeah.
This isn't something. This conversation in a public forum like this is not something I ever envisioned myself doing. But you guys are doing it, and it seems like the next right thing. So I'm in.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Because no matter how much work we do, it's not always easy stepping out of the comfort zone.
That's where the wonder is. My comfort zone is a pretty miserable damn place.
Me too. Well put. Nice. All right. Well, that is a wrap on this.